In our last lesson, we talked about the Articles of Confederation and some of the weaknesses and limitations of that system of government. So we're going to wrap up the Articles of Confederation in this lesson and set the stage for the Constitutional Convention. So the Annapolis Convention is called in the fall of 1786 to address trade and navigation disputes between states. So remember, under the Articles of Confederation, states are going to maintain their sovereignty and their own power, and that's going to create tensions between states. So James Madison, who's one of the framers of the Constitution, wanted to have this meeting because he wanted to see changes in the structure of government. So at this point, our founders can already see some of the issues with the Articles of Confederation. However, participation at the Annapolis Convention is very weak. Only 5 of 13 states are going to send representatives to this convention. The convention is held in Annapolis, Maryland, and Maryland doesn't even send any representative to this meeting. So not a lot of participation there. It's not a very productive meeting. So really all they're going to do is address trade and the untapped economic potential of the new United States. So not a whole lot's going to be accomplished here. So the delegates are going to call for another convention in Philadelphia the following spring to continue their discussions on the possibility of something other than the Articles. However, you have to keep in mind, at this point, most Americans are not wanting to replace the Articles of Confederation. They like this idea of states holding the power and maintaining their sovereignty. Southern states are fearing that slavery could be outlawed under a new system of government. Smaller states like New Jersey are going to fear losing equal representation in Congress. So remember, under the Articles, every state, regardless of size and population, has that one vote in Congress. So smaller states are going to fear losing that. And citizens are still nervous about the idea of a strong national government. They had just gotten away from that British tyranny. So they don't want a strong national government that could open the door for that happening again. And then Shay's Rebellion is going to happen. So Shay's Rebellion was a popular uprising against the government of Massachusetts. And it's going to add ammunition for those wanting to replace the Articles. So how did Shay's Rebellion occur? So one, there is a shortage of hard money, and here hard money means money that is backed by some sort of gold standard, and debt. All right, so there's a lot of debt going on in the colonies, not just with the government, but with citizens. They're in debt as well. Citizens and governments are unable to pay their debt. State governments are going to raise taxes and demand hard money. And foreclosures are going to be widespread. So following the Revolutionary War, many of these farmers in Massachusetts are going to find themselves burdened with this crushing debt, and they're facing the foreclosure on their property. Okay, so these farmers have a lot to be upset about at this point. The government, under the Articles of Confederation, doesn't have the power to tax. So because the government can't tax, they're not able to pay these veterans, these farmers, okay, that are war veterans, for their service. So these people are facing debt and foreclosure. And that's what's going to lead to this rebellion. So members of the rebellion, again, are Revolutionary War vets they're going to focus on closing the courts. That's what they want to do, is close the state courts, because that's going to stall the foreclosure process. It's going to be really difficult for the state government to put down this rebellion. In October of 1786, the Massachusetts legislature passed the Riot Act, which absolved sheriffs and officials from prosecution for killing rioters. And the Massachusetts state militia is going to be unable to put down this rebellion. Okay, so the state government is going to have a big problem on their hands here. However, remember that the U.S. government though they had the power to maintain an army, has no money to raise an army. So they can't help. So eventually, wealthy elites in Boston are going to pay for an army of their own to defeat these rebels. Okay, so these Revolutionary War vets, these farmers that are trying to close these courts and stall this foreclosure process. So, this rebellion is going to convince the nation's leaders that a stronger national government is going to be needed to maintain order and protect property. And the rebellion is even going to convince George Washington, who had been a Revolutionary War hero, to return to public life. And he's eventually going to become the first president of the United States. And that's going to lead into the Constitutional Convention, which we'll talk about in the next lesson.